And here we are, the second race of the NASCAR Cup Series season, and we're going to Fontana, going out to sunny California and watching these new gen cars take on kind of a more typical racetrack in the NASCAR circuit. We're going to talk about that here on Drafting Buddies. Almost couldn't find the intro slide. Haven't been doing this for a little while, so I got to get back into the swing of things now that I'm feeling better. So, welcome to Drafting Buddies, a NASCAR commentary show where I, Zach, and my buddy David here talk NASCAR. And this is a kind of a more relaxed show where we can kind of give our feelings over what's ahead of us here. And big week for NASCAR as we take a look at Fontana. We move away from the high banks of Daytona, and we go to sort of a mini restrictor plate track, if you can call it that, a big 2-mile oval here in Fontana. Say hello to the internet, David.
Good evening, everyone. As you mentioned, Zach, heading to Auto Club Speedway, 2-mile oval, very wide, multiple groove racing, all those points, and a couple more as we go through this coming up.
Yeah, so we're just we're gonna put this on the screen here for you guys to see, and Drafting Buddies really is just a show where you and I are just gonna talk NASCAR for a little while, and we quit when we're done, and I love it. So we had a really interesting week at Daytona and got to see a little bit of everything, but now we finally get to see the real thing. I think with NASCAR and how far they've come with producing this car here at a racetrack that's 2 miles long, and it's got many racing grooves and always makes for super exciting racing out here in California as NASCAR begins its West Coast swing. And David, what are you looking at of like the car, I guess, in terms of features when it comes to a track like this?
I am interested to see how these drivers really tune their vehicles. As you mentioned, more of a typical NASCAR oval track for drivers coming up with the new independent suspensions. How are these drivers really going to tune that car to stick down to the road surface and get that traction and grip that you usually see in some of these shorter tracks as they make their way, especially through the middle of the turn? Saw in practice some drivers struggling, having some issues getting loose, spinning out. Perhaps those adjustments were a little bit too far and they were hitting their front splitters on the ground. I would be interested to try to look at some of those videos or even hear some team perspectives as we get into tomorrow and then post-race possibly hearing some of those teams talk about what went wrong and what they're going to fix moving forward.
Yeah, it's really frustrating from a fan perspective. I watched Cup qualifying today, and it was a struggle for a lot of drivers to keep the car underneath them, and there's quite a bit of things going wrong with the cars. There's a bump in turns 3 and 4 right now that drivers kept getting caught on. They don't know if it's the ride height blocks that are underneath the car that's hitting the bump, or if it's the diffuser that's hitting the bump. But either way, it's in the middle of the bump in the track is in the racing surface, and they would have figured this out if NASCAR had more than freaking 20 minutes worth of qualifying of practice. That's it. Like, they have 20 minutes to figure out what they're going to do. And that's probably the most frustrating thing as a fan, because you saw guys just not really knowing what they had underneath them going out to qualify. And that's a shame. And I think the Xfinity guys, they had they had it even worse. I think Actually, I think the Xfinity guys had 20 minutes. The Cup guys had a ridiculously short amount of time too, but the Xfinity guys today, they had 20 minutes at like 9:30 in the morning this morning on a track that was like a
Cold.
yeah, it's not even close to what they're racing on. And I watched the Xfinity race, and there were parts failures, and there was a big fire at one point in that race because an oil line broke. Well, if you had normal practice, you could troubleshoot wear on some of these parts that are breaking. And man, like I think somebody's going to get hurt this year because a part is going to break on one of these new cars that they should have troubleshot, but NASCAR's just not letting that happen.
For sure. And with the new cars and all these equipment failures that we've seen already, we've seen tires coming off of cars. I think NASCAR really has their work cut out for them as far as making sure these cars are safe. The penalties that we expected to come down last week for drivers modifying those wheels, NASCAR took a deeper look into the modifications that were made and said it was okay because it was a safety concern. I have two issues with that. One, we had these two teams that modified those tires and didn't share it with the rest of the field. If it was truly a safety concern, they're now posing dangers to themselves and their competitors, which I'm not okay with. But then NASCAR coming out and making these changes, why wasn't this found beforehand if it was truly a safety issue that could have hurt one of these drivers? It's just frustrating and terrifying to think about what could go wrong on these vehicles that they haven't really had the opportunity to test or maybe just overlooked in the time that they were developing this next gen car.
Yeah, and I think like compounding on top of that is the fact that they had a whole extra year to work on these cars. A whole nother year because of the pandemic. Now, like I get it. Like some parts of the pandemic, like it's not like these guys were working at full force the whole time, but regardless, you had 365 more days to develop this car than what you said you were going to have. This is just really upsetting. Like the problems of the next gen car are already coming to light. Kyle Busch, they interviewed him in the at the end of practice, or yeah, at the end of practice, at the end of qualifying today. I watched the interview, and he was like, they talked to him and they said, you know, we were in your rear, we were in your cam in your car, and you really had to kind of like feather the throttle, and as you're getting up through the gears, like what's that all about? And he literally was like, it's a part problem, and he says it has to do with the like the same problem that Reddick had at the Clash.
It was a shift linkage.
Yep.
The cars, when the transmissions were shifting, had so much power and torque going to that transmission, it literally broke the parts inside the transmission. You couldn't shift.
So he was saying like, yeah, it's a part problem, and he's like, I think it's that, and the only time I've ever experienced it is at he was like racing rally or something, you know, something on sand, and he's like, that's the only time I've ever experienced that before. And he's like, I know what that problem is. And they asked him, well, can you fix it? And he goes, no, like you can't fix that. That's a part problem that you have to go back to the shop and you have to literally fix it. And like Kyle Busch is already assuming, like, unless if they go to a backup car and pray that this isn't a part issue throughout Gibbs, but it's already a problem on Reddick's car in the Clash, and really, like, it's a problem with a new gen car in general, right? It wasn't just Reddick that had the problem in the Clash, and we didn't see it at Daytona because they're not shifting as much. Does this car have like a catastrophic issue with it that all these drivers are now going to figure out this week? We don't know because there's no practice, and that's really frustrating.
I think for Auto Club, parts issues like the transmission aren't going to be a big deal. Where we are going to have issues is when we start getting into those short tracks, Bristol,
Yeah,
Martinsville, track that or road
road
courses even.
courses. They added all those road courses.
Like all those downshifts, and as Kyle mentioned with the transmission, I think the team could, in theory, go in and fix that transmission. But the larger problem is NASCAR's rule set with these parts
Yep.
has already said that any modifications to them
Yep.
is a no-go.
Yeah.
So even if you had a solution that the team could open up the transmission there at the track, put it back together, NASCAR is going to disqualify you for changing the part.
Yeah. And so like that, when I watched qualifying today, that was like a huge storyline that was starting to unfold where like these guys are just kind of throwing their hands up in the air and they go, we have no idea how to race this car. We don't have any time in it. And any problems that we have are totally unexpected. And I saw that in qualifying as Bubba Wallace wrecked, as Kevin Harvick wrecked, as Eric Almirola spun out, as Chase Elliott spun out, as all these drivers are wrecking because they don't know how to drive the car and they don't have enough seat time in it. It's just, I watched qualifying today and I just sat back and was like, this I could be watching like an iRacing event tomorrow. Legit, just like guys just struggling, and it's gonna be a mess. It very well could be a mess.
It will be interesting to see, but I'd like to move forward into kind of our next little topic area here. I think we will be spared from that mess for the fact that we have a 2-mile long oval. The track itself is 75 feet wide, 15-foot aprons, 14-degree banking in the turns, 11 degrees down the backstretch. I think this track is going to clean itself up if there are problems that develop on the track. There's enough space for drivers to kind of avoid that as the cars are spinning down to the inside, hopefully coming off these banks. Lots of speed that should be expected in these cars. I think some of the average qualifying speeds that I was seeing was around 174. So these drivers are going quite quick, but thank goodness with all these problems, there is a lot of asphalt to find a way through any mess that might happen in front of you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was watching Rex coming off of turn 4 and like in the middle of 3 and 4, and they started at the bottom and they washed all the way up the racetrack, all the way up to the wall. So, I mean, if you can avoid that, kudos to you. But I'm gonna be hard pressed to see anybody really brave the bottom a whole lot tomorrow, just because it seems like there's a little more stability up top. I watched the Xfinity race as well, where a lot of speed is made up on top, and it's difficult. Like we climbed in iRacing this week in the next gen cars, and we were able to kind of experience what the car would experience under heavy turning, and it's a boat, and at this racetrack, and it's so different. It drives so different. And it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. I think it's in the driver's hands a lot more, but definitely a lot of potential for drivers to make moves at this kind of racetrack. But for some drivers, they're in for a world of hurt even before the race starts. We have Kurt Busch like failing an inspection 3 times, right? He's losing a crew member. He's probably getting fined. He starts from the back.
Start from the back. Yep,
He
it's
and a pass
big
through
mess there.
and a pass through penalty.
Yes,
Yeah, like what in the world? Uh, it, just nuts. I don't know how you can be that far off and be that far off 3 times in a row uh, on a car that's supposed to be spec.
but it wasn't just Kurt Busch that had issues. There were multiple other drivers that also failed inspection twice. We have the four from Stewart Haas Racing
He's
by
going to a backup car. He wrecked it. Doesn't matter.
Kevin Harvick. So even if he wasn't going to the back, he's now losing a crew member. Big problems there. The 6, Brad Keselowski. The 12, Ryan Blaney. The 22 of Joey Logano.
He
The
wrecked too.
23 of Bubba Wallace.
He wrecked
And
too.
then the 78 of BJ McLeod. Not that we know McLeod's going to do any big, exciting things. We never expect that, but these cars, I think it goes back to these drivers don't have time. You put the car on the track, you have 20 minutes of practice. These teams really don't have time to make those adjustments. And then after they make the adjustments that the driver wants, trying to get it in spec for the NASCAR inspections, there's just not that comfy feeling of we had the practice time, we had the qualifying time, and we know we're going to pass inspection the first time around. These teams are really under the gun, I feel, with NASCAR this year. And overall, as a sport, just really making it hard on these teams to compete in a fair way.
Yeah, you said it best. It's just NASCAR's got to tweak these practice rules, and it might just come from that like new drivers council thing that like Jeff Burton's the head of, and yeah, because if tomorrow's a train wreck, oh man, does it look bad on NASCAR. Like this is your first normal race, not every week's Daytona, and like
it would be 2 weeks in a row. We lost multiple cars at Daytona.
Yeah.
I think going through this season, it's going to be a problem at multiple tracks, and NASCAR is really going to have to take a step back and look at it.
Yeah, and I think that if they are serious about we want to innovate, we want to make sure that the best product is out there, they got to fork over some money and say, okay, like it's going to cost us more to practice, but we're going to have to go out and have teams get tires and have teams get gas and get the personnel out here a day in advance and do it the old way. And because like what they have right now, it's so abundantly clear, right, that through the Clash, Daytona, the random practices that they held online where nobody could drive at Charlotte of all places, and now here, like just here in qualifying, not even like here in the race yet. Something's got to change. Like these drivers don't have enough time, and like I understand the car's supposed to be challenging, but if not all the bugs are worked out, you're screwed. So it's gonna be wild. So I think we can both agree that we have no idea what to expect from this race, except for calamity, probably, because I mean, dirty air is probably not going to play as big of a factor anymore. Where in the past, like you literally couldn't pass people. I'm excited for that kind of racing where, you know, the driver matters, but ultimately, like it won't matter if 1, the car breaks, and 2, the car spins out because it hits a bump. Like you're at Fontana, the track's got a lot of character. It's one of the older surfaces in the sport. I'm sorry, but this car is probably too low to the ground. to handle some of these bumps. I mean, I just watched the Xfinity race, and I was watching guys, bounce up and down, and I watched qualifying, and these guys are like super low, and uh, even with the ride height the way that they are, there's just pieces underneath the car that drag, and man, it's gonna be a mess.
Well, in order to have dirty air, you have to be able to keep cars on the track, and that's going to be the big story. So,
Yeah,
um, I'm looking forward to see what these guys can do, but I will say that our winners picks this week, I had a tough time looking down through these lists and trying to find some drivers that I think one can keep it together and then two have a shot at being up front of whatever is left come the end of this race.
yeah. Um, so our winners picks last week, uh, nearly all of our winners picks wrecked out and weren't factors at Daytona. So I'd like to think we don't jinx our winners, and so we're gonna go. We're gonna go again. We're gonna pick our primary winner and then pick our dark horse. So let's go. How about you name your primary first, and then I'll follow, and then I'll name my dark horse, and then you'll follow.
All right. So for my primary, because this track race is so much like a super speedway, he's really quick. He does great at restrictor plate racing. I am going with the number 11 of Denny Hamlin. I think he gets it done this week. He had a great car there at Daytona, just got caught up in an incident that happened in front of him. I think he can find a way, if he can stay out front and ahead of any possible messes that are going to happen, to bring it to the winner's circle. What are your thoughts, Zach?
That's a good pick. Hamlin is pretty good at this track. He's had some luck here in the past. I'm gonna go with a guy who has 4 Xfinity Series wins at this racetrack, but 0 Cup wins at this track, and he was in the booth for the Xfinity race today, so I think he gained some perspective for what might transpire tomorrow, if that matters. I don't even know if that matters anymore, but that used to mean something, and so but I'm picking Joey Logano. Vegas has him at 14-1 odds to win, so I think he finally ends that drought for the Cup side of this racetrack.
Sounds good.
So on the flip side, for my dark horse pick, I'm gonna go with a guy that Vegas has. Let me see here, at 250-1 odds, and that would be Eric Jones, driving the Richard Petty 43 car. And the reason why I picked that is because I think the new gen car is made for drivers like Eric Jones. He's just a wheel man. He has not had obviously really good equipment and Petty equipment in the past, but since Petty kind of linked up with GMS, they're now a 2-car operation, and things are looking pretty good out of that camp. I mean, him and Ty Dillon, they were both sporty in the Clash, and he seemed pretty quick. He qualified second today, so he's going to start from the front row. Pit selection is going to be real big, so he's probably going to start on pit road, either the first stall on pit road when you pull into pit road, or he's going to start the pit stall before or after the garage area, so that he can either have a clean exit or a clean entrance, depending on where he wants it. So, yeah, that's my dark pick, Eric Jones.
I am taking the other man off the front row, and I want to see him go back to back, Wouldn't it be wild? Rookie coming in, new car, new season for 2022. Austin Cindric going back to back from the Daytona 500 here to Auto Club. What a story that would be. Qualified on pole, had a really fast car by the looks of it there in qualifying. excited to see what he's gonna do.
He was pretty strong in his first group, and then he went out and he posted a really good lap in the second group. I will say Chase Elliott was going to beat him in 3 and 4. I mean, he was already like going down the backstretch. He was already tracking to beat him, and Chase was the last car to go out in qualifying, and he wrecked it in 3 and 4, the same spot that everybody else wrecked it, and so Cindric survives, but regardless, he is our pole winner, and I think that's a really good dark horse pick. I think if he wins again, he can't be a dark horse anymore. I think he would have to be favorite for the championship at this point because apparently they made the car for Austin Cindric. Uh, but all right, well, that will be. I think that'll be that here, David. We're just over what I believe is the 26-minute mark here on Drafting Buddies. So I am going to turn our ticker off here. And any final words for what we're getting ready to watch here in Fontana?
I just want to clarify that if Austin Cindric does win, you claimed it first, so I'll count that as your dark horse pick for the championship well before we start talking about it. And no, for Auto Club, I think that's it. I think we covered everything really well. Excited to see this race tomorrow, and interested to see who comes out on top and survives all the way to the end.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Drafting Buddies. We will be right back here on the channel recapping the race here at Fontana and NASCAR's first look at the next gen car at what will probably be the most realistic track they've raced on so far with the next gen car. But until then, take a look out for other content here on the channel, and have a good time tomorrow, guys and gals, watching the real life NASCAR race. And I know we will, and we'll be right back here on Drafting Buddies, ready to talk about it with you here real soon. I'm Zach, and for my partner David, keep watching some NASCAR, and we'll be back to talk about it here in just a little while. See ya.